Hey guys, I was getting some questions online about the difference between a 307R and a 310R. They're both can be mounted to the 1911, but there was some confusion about exactly what the actual differences were. The 307R is meant to mount to a para ordnance 1911, and the 310R is actually meant to mount to a government profile 1911, but they'll work interchangeably for the most part. So I'll just quickly go over right quick the difference. I no longer have my 310R, unfortunately. I did sell it because I got way too good of an offer not to, but this one is one I found online. I lucked up, got it for a steal like I did my 310R, and anyway, I'll show you the differences between it. So this is my Safariland holster. Yes, I did put it on a different mounting platform, but the reason I did that was because I actually used this in competitions, and I needed something a little more stable than the classic Safariland system. So we'll pull it out. Safety first, I'll go ahead and remove the magazine. I do keep this magazine loaded all the time because this is my nightstand pistol when I'm not using it in competitions. This is a 10-round Wilson Combat mag. If you have any questions about them, ask in the comments below. The chamber's clear. You can see there. For all the safety freaks out there, yes, the chamber's clear. So, back to the Surefire. There's not much of a huge difference between this and the 310R. Dimensionally, the housing is exactly the same. The same width, same length, same height. Everything's the same on it, with the exception of the pressure switch. Even the slide stop is the exact same slide stop that comes with the 310R. Same length and everything. I didn't even have to modify the frame, or I didn't have to modify the housing to fit the frame or anything like that, because the para ordnance frames, the only way they differ is back here in this area. It's a little bit wider because it accommodates a double stack magazine. And this is the part that's different on a 307R versus a 310R. So as most of you that have 310Rs have immediately, can tell, this is a good bit different looking than the pressure switch on your 310R, which traditionally would have had these extensions come up, loop over, go back down, there's a little hole in the center to interact with a longer grub screw, or a longer grip screw up here at the top. So that's the main difference between it. The 310R has a very thin cable that goes up into the side of the housing, and the pressure switch bolts on with those little extended grip screws. This is a lot different in that this is where your actual tension comes from. On a 310R, there is a grub screw in the bottom of the housing, kind of like what's on this 633R. There's a grub screw in the bottom that when tightened, it applies pressure against the trigger guard, which basically keeps the light snug against the bottom of the frame so it doesn't wobble up and down. This one's a little different. There is no grub screw in the bottom. That's because traditionally, when it's mounted to a para ordnance, this piece here that goes up from the pressure switch to the actual housing, and as you can see the little hole there, it actually does bolt into the back of the housing. This piece traditionally would have actually applied the torque to the bottom of the light to keep it against the frame. So there was no need for the grub screw. However, when I took this out, it eliminated that feature, and therefore my light was wobbling up and down. So my solution to that, and this is the modification I had to make it work for my pistol, is I basically drilled a hole through a little piece of rubber and bolted the screw that held this on originally, ran the screw through that piece of rubber, and the rubber's thick enough that it applies pressure against the trigger guard. This is nicer in a way than a 310R is, because a 310R would always mar up the front edge of your trigger guard with that little grub screw. There would literally just wear a little indentation into the front of the trigger guard that had to be filed out if you ever took it off. But with this, there's no marring occurring, which is quite nice. Plus, it keeps the light nice and snug against the bottom of the frame without being so tight that it overrides this and makes it hard for the slide to lock up after the last round. So that's actually pretty sweet versus the 310R, because in my other video, I addressed that issue with getting the right amount of tension on that screw so that it doesn't lock up the slide stop from actually being able to lock the slide back, and it also doesn't wobble around on the frame really bad. But here's why I took this off. Again, earlier I mentioned the para ordnance frames are wider because they take a double stack magazine, where this is a single stack magazine. Well, if you'll notice, this is pretty wide. It's probably a lot wider than the one on your 310R. And I'm going to flip it upside down just so you can get a good view of about where it originally sat on the pistol. Now, obviously, it'd be flipped around, and this part would travel up under here and go up into the back of the light, but I can't really do that right now for demonstration purposes. But this is roughly how it would have looked. But here's the problem. You see that gap under there? that was causing a very weird feeling grip. Whenever you would grip the pistol, draw and extend on target, it was just a really weird feel to the frame. So I took it off. I really hated to do that, but it was necessary so I'd have a more comfortable grip to hold whenever shooting the weapon. For the most part, though, it works identical to the way my 310R did. The rocker switch on the side still works just the same. I ended up putting the same LED module in the lamp assembly that I had in the other one, and this no, it's not. I thought it was the same lamp assembly, but it's not. It's a different L30 lamp assembly I was able to snag for a steal, but it's a great light. I mean, I'm sold on these. I wish they weren't as sought after as they are, and I would put them, on all my 1911s. But it is kind of hard to find, and I'm not going to pay eBay prices for this stuff. But anyway, one thing I may do eventually, just a side note, I may just take a Dremel tool and cut these corners off and mount this up on there and solder a little pressure switch onto this one little front piece there, and then rewrap it in heat shrink. And that'll make a much more lower profile grip switch that will not interfere with the profile of the frame itself. So, and that's, again, this is, made to fit. It would expand out like that around the double stack 1911 frame, but again, this is a single stack. But that's the only difference. So if you can find yourself a 307R or a 607R, you're going to be set if you take this off. Thank you.